You decide to stay in on a Friday night. Your friends are out having expensive dinners. They're planning trips to Tulum and they're living their best lives. But you decided to stay home, ordered cheap takeout, and transfer $500 into your brokerage account. You've been doing this consistently for over 2 years. You open the app, fully expecting to feel like a financial genius who is miles ahead of everyone else. You look at your total return. It's up, maybe a few $100. You do the mental math and realize your money is growing at a pace that barely outruns inflation, and you're sacrificing your best years for a payoff that feels a lifetime away. You close the app, heavily frustrated, and think, why am I even doing this? At this rate, I'll be 80 before I can afford to enjoy it. If you are watching this right now thinking, okay, that's literally me, then you need to hear exactly what I'm about to say. My name is Scarlett, and I spend way too much time thinking about the mathematics behind building wealth. If you're someone who feels like you are doing everything right with your money, but barely seeing any real progress, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Look, everyone in the personal finance space loves to quote Albert Einstein. They all say compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. It's printed on coffee mugs, it's in every financial book, and it sounds incredibly profound. But here's what nobody tells you about the 8th wonder of the world. For the first decade, it feels remarkably like a scam. We are constantly fed this narrative that if you just skip the daily latte and put that money into an S&P 500 index fund, you'll magically wake up rich. But when you actually start doing it, the reality is painfully boring. You put your money in, the market goes up 2%, then it drops 3%, then it goes up 1%. Months go by, years go by. You've sacrificed vacations, you've driven an older car, you've budgeted down to the dollar, and for what? A measly 8% return on a $10,000 portfolio? That's $800 a year. You can't even pay a month's rent with that. This frustration right here, this exact feeling of compounding is too slow, is the #1 reason people never build generational wealth. It's not a math problem, it's a psychology problem, and it's why I want to introduce you to a framework called the 8-4-3 rule. Before we break down the exact math of the 8-4-3 rule, we need to address a harsh reality. Most people think wealth is built by finding the next big stock, timing the crypto market perfectly, or starting a billion-dollar tech company. That is a fundamentally flawed belief. Real, sustainable wealth is usually built by being incredibly bored for a very long time. But human beings hate being bored. We crave dopamine. We want immediate feedback. Now, you might be thinking, Scarlett, it's not just boredom, it's that the math isn't mathing fast enough. I have bills to pay today. And I get that completely. But let me hit you with an eye-opening statistic that completely shifted my perspective. According to the Dalbar Quantitative Analysis of Investor Behavior, which is a massive, highly credible study that tracks how real people actually invest over time, over a recent 20-year period, the S&P 500 averaged roughly 9.7% annual return, but the average mutual fund investor during that exact same time frame earned just 4.2% per year. Let that sink in for a second. The market offered nearly 10%, but the actual humans investing in that market took home less than half of that. Why? Because they sabotaged themselves. They looked at their portfolios, felt like it was growing too slowly, and they pivoted. They sold their boring index funds to buy a hot stock they heard about on Reddit. They panicked when the market dipped and moved to cash. They constantly interrupted compounding because they fundamentally misunderstood how it works. Here's the thing about human biology. Our brains are wired to understand linear growth. If you take 1 step, you move 1 meter. If you take 10 steps, you move 10 meters. Linear math is safe, predictable, and instinctual. But compounding is exponential, and our brains literally cannot comprehend exponential growth without mapping the hard math out on paper. There's a famous analogy about folding a piece of paper. If you have a piece of paper that is 0.1 millimeters thick and you fold it in half, it's 0.2 millimeters. Fold it again, it's 0.4. If I asked you how thick it would be if you folded it 42 times, your linear brain might guess maybe a few feet, maybe the height of a house. The actual answer is that it would reach the moon. That is the power of exponential growth, and it is exactly what happens to your money. But just like folding that paper, the first 10, 20, or even 30 folds don't look very impressive. They just look like a slightly thicker piece of paper. This brings us directly to the 8-4-3 rule. The 8-4-3 rule is a framework that helps you visualize the timeline of compounding so that you stop relying on your linear brain to judge your financial progress. It specifically tracks how long it takes to hit consistent wealth milestones, like every $100,000 when you invest a steady amount of money into the market. Let's use some clear math with real dollar figures. Let's say you decide to invest $10,000 every single year. That's about $833 a month. You automate this. You set it up so that money goes straight from your paycheck into a broad market index fund like the S&P 500. Historically, the S&P 500 has averaged about 10% annual return over the long term, before adjusting for inflation. For the sake of easy math, we will use that 10% figure. Here is the journey to your first $100,000. This is the 8 in the 8-4-3 rule. In year 1, you invest your $10,000. It grows by 10%, so you make $1,000. You now have $11,000. In year 2, you add another $10,000. Now you're earning 10% on $21,000. You make $2,100. You keep grinding. Year 3, year 4, year 5. You're sacrificing. You're watching your friends buy new cars on high-interest financing. You're watching them go on European vacations while you are dutifully transferring your $833 every single month into a brokerage account you are not allowed to touch. It will take you approximately 8 years to cross the $100,000 mark. Now let's stop and look at the brutal psychology of this first phase. At the end of year 8, you have roughly $114,000. But if you look closely at the math, you contributed $80,000 of your own hard-earned money. The market, the magical, wondrous power of compounding, only gave you about $34,000 in returns. This is the danger zone. This is exactly the moment where the vast majority of people give up. You look at the math and you think, I just spent nearly a decade of my life, 8 years of budgeting, 8 years of discipline, and all the market gave me was 34 grand? I could have made that driving Uber on the weekends. I could have made that flipping furniture. Charlie Munger, the billionaire investing legend and Warren Buffett's longtime business partner, famously said, "The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that was purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. Why did a billionaire care so much about the first 100 grand? Because he understood the 8-4-3 rule. He understood that the first phase is purely a test of endurance. It is the price of admission. The first 8 years are not about the interest you earn. They are about the capital you inject and the habits you build. You are literally building the engine of your wealth. And building an engine isn't fun, and it doesn't get you anywhere while you're doing it. Here's what most people don't realize. They judge the entire journey of wealth building based on the speed of those first 8 years. They project that linear slog out into the future. They think, okay, if it took me 8 years to get $100,000, then it's going to take me 16 years to get $200,000. It's going to take me 24 years to get $300,000. And because that timeline is so depressing, they pivot. They pull their money out and try to find a shortcut. They buy a hyped-up altcoin, they try day trading options, and they end up wiping out their progress, putting themselves right back at day 0. But this is where it gets really interesting. This brings us to the 4 in the 8-4-3 rule. Once you have that first $100,000, the math fundamentally changes. You are no longer just relying on the $10,000 you are putting in every year. You now have a silent partner who is working 24/7, never sleeps, never takes a vacation, and is completely immune to burnout. That silent partner is your $100,000 portfolio. Let's look at the math for your next $100,000 milestone. You continue to invest that same $10,000 a year. You don't increase it, you just maintain the exact same boring habit. In year 9, your portfolio starts at roughly $114,000. It grows by 10%, giving you $11,400 in interest alone. Plus, you add your $10,000. By year 10, your portfolio is generating over $13,000 a year in interest. By year 11, it's generating over $15,000 a year in interest. Notice what just happened. Your money is now contributing more to your wealth than you are. Your returns have officially overtaken your contributions. Because of this shift, it does not take another 8 years to make your next $100,000. It only takes 4 years. By year 12, your portfolio will cross the $200,000 mark. In fact, following our 10% math, you'll be sitting at around $213,000. Let's really break down why this is so mind-blowing. In the first 8 years, you sacrificed $80,000 of your own money to build the portfolio. In the next 4 years, you only contributed $40,000 of your own money, but your portfolio grew by another $100,000. The heavy lifting is being transferred from your back onto the back of your investments. This is the phase I like to call the accelerated growth phase, but from a psychological standpoint, it's the validation phase. This is when you finally look at your brokerage account and say, "Oh, it's actually working. I'm not crazy." Let's use an analogy to really cement what's happening here, because visualizing this is the only way to protect your portfolio from your own impatience. Imagine you are pushing a giant snowball up a steep hill. That's the first 8 years. It's exhausting. The snowball is small, it's barely picking up any extra snow as you roll it, and every step requires maximum physical effort. If you slip, the snowball rolls back down. That's the fear of a bear market when you're just starting out. You're doing all the work, and the snowball isn't really helping you. But eventually, you reach the top of the hill. That's the $100,000 mark. Now you get to push the snowball down the other side. That's the 4-year phase. You are still walking alongside it, you are still giving it a little push, which represents your continued $10,000 annual contributions, but gravity has taken over. The snowball is getting bigger on its own. As it gets bigger, its surface area increases, which means every single time it rolls over, it picks up exponentially more snow than it did the last time. You are putting in the exact same amount of effort, but the result is doubling. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Scarlett, but what if the market crashes during those 4 years? What if my 10% average doesn't happen perfectly year over year? And you know what? You're completely right to ask that. The stock market is not a savings account. It does not hand you a neat, predictable 10% on January 1st every year. In reality, your returns might look like up 20% one year, down 15% the next, up 8%, and then up 25%. It's a bumpy, volatile ride. But here is a fundamental truth about wealth building that the panic sellers completely miss. Volatility is the toll you pay for the compounding to work. If you try to avoid the bumps by keeping your money in a safe, high-yield savings account earning 4%, you completely break the 8-4-3 rule. Your linear brain might feel safer, but your future net worth is being quietly destroyed by inflation. The people who actually build massive wealth aren't the ones who know how to predict market crashes. They're the ones who learn how to entirely ignore them. They realize that a market crash in year 9 or 10 is actually just an opportunity for their annual $10,000 contribution to buy stocks at a massive discount, making the eventual compounding even more explosive when the market recovers. When you internalize this, you stop looking at your portfolio like a report card that grades you every single day. Instead, you start looking at it like a bamboo tree. If you plant a Chinese bamboo tree, you have to water it and fertilize it every single day. For the first year, nothing happens. You water it the second year, nothing. Third year, fourth year, absolutely zero visible growth above the soil. To anyone walking by, it looks like you're wasting your time watering an empty patch of dirt. But what they don't see is that underground, the tree is building a massive, complex root system. It's preparing its foundation. Then, in the fifth year, the tree suddenly shoots up to 80 feet in the span of just 6 weeks. Did the tree grow 80 feet in 6 weeks, or did it take 5 years? It took 5 years. If you had stopped watering it at year 4 because you were bored or because you wanted immediate results, the tree would have died. Your portfolio is that bamboo tree. The first 8 years are the underground root system. The minimal returns you see aren't the actual reward. They're just the foundational structure being put in place so that your money can support explosive growth later on. And once those roots are built, the acceleration becomes genuinely hard to believe, which brings us to the 3 in the 8-4-3 rule. Let's look at this third phase. You've endured the 8-year slog to get to $100,000. You've coasted through the 4-year validation phase to hit $200,000. You are still only contributing that exact same $10,000 a year. How long does it take to get to your next milestone of $300,000? Just 3 years. By year 15, your portfolio goes from $200,000 to over $300,000. In fact, following our math, you'll be sitting at around $318,000. Look at how ridiculously skewed the math has become. First $100,000 is 8 years. Second $100,000 is 4 years. Third $100,000 is 3 years. In this third phase, your portfolio is generating roughly $20,000 to $25,000 a year just in compound interest. Your money is now earning more than double what you are contributing to it. The snowball is officially a boulder, and it is carving its own path down the mountain. But the 8-4-3 rule doesn't just stop at year 15. The numbers continue to compress, and the speed of your wealth creation becomes almost violently aggressive. And yet, knowing the math is only 10% of the battle. The other 90% is surviving your own brain when the market drops 20% and you're terrified of losing everything you've built. Let's keep going down this timeline because this is where it gets really interesting. And frankly, this is the part of the math that makes me slightly frustrated because if they just taught this in high school, we wouldn't have an entire generation of adults panic selling their 401ks every time the news mentions a recession. You're at year 15. You have roughly $318,000. You are still dutifully, boringly putting in your $10,000 a year. How long to hit $400,000? About 2.4 years. How long to hit $500,000? Less than 2 years. Let's fast forward to the ultimate milestone, $1 million. By the time you hit roughly year 24 of this journey, your portfolio crosses the $1 million mark. But here is the statistic that should completely change the way you view your income forever. To go from $900,000 to $1 million takes exactly 1 year. At this stage, your portfolio is generating $90,000 in compound interest annually. Add your little $10,000 contribution, and you are growing by $100,000 every 12 months. Your money is literally earning a 6-figure salary. It is making more money while you sleep, while you watch Netflix, and while you eat takeout than most people make working 40 hours a week at a job they hate. The first $100,000 took you 8 agonizing years. The 10th $100,000 took you 12 months. That is the 8-4-3 rule and its subsequent compression. 8 years, then 4 years, then 3 years, then 2 years, then 1 year. The mathematical acceleration is absolute. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Scarlett, the math is great, but we don't live in a spreadsheet. We live in the real world where the economy crashes, pandemics happen, and inflation ruins everything. And look, you are 100% right. And this is exactly where the psychology of money destroys the mathematics of money. Here's what most people don't realize about having a large portfolio. The bigger your snowball gets, the more terrifying the market drops become. Let's say you've made it to $500,000. You've been investing for nearly 2 decades. You are feeling incredibly proud. And then a massive recession hits. The S&P 500 drops 20% in a single year. Your $500,000 portfolio drops to $400,000. You just lost $100,000 on paper. Take a second and really put yourself in those shoes. $100,000. That is more money than you contributed out of your own pocket during the entire first 8 years of your journey. You just watched a decade of your own hard work evaporate in 6 months. Your brain will scream at you. Your linear, survival-driven brain will say, pull it out, save what's left, put it in cash under the mattress. There is a very famous economic concept developed by Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman called prospect theory. Kahneman and his partner, Amos Tversky, mathematically proved something called loss aversion. They found that the psychological pain of losing $100 is twice as intense as the joy of gaining $100. So when your portfolio drops by $100,000, you don't just feel sad, you feel genuine biological panic. Your nervous system reacts the same way it would if a tiger was chasing you. This is why people sell at the absolute bottom of the market. The pain is literally twice as intense as the logic. But if you understand the 8-4-3 rule, you realize that selling during that 20% drop is the single worst financial mistake you can make. Why? Because if you sell, you interrupt the compounding. You kill the snowball right as it's gaining its maximum momentum. When the market inevitably recovers, and historically it has always recovered, you won't be in it. You'll be sitting in cash, earning nothing, while the people who stayed bored ride the wave right back up and trigger their next acceleration phase. So how do we actually apply this? What are the actionable steps you can take today to make sure you survive the 8-4-3 slog and protect yourself from your own brain during the acceleration phases? Step number 1, you have to automate and delete. I am entirely serious. If you are checking your brokerage app every single day, you are setting yourself up for failure. You are feeding your brain's desire for linear dopamine. And when the market goes sideways for 6 months, you will get bored and you will tinker. Set up your automatic transfer, whether it's $100 a month or $1,000 a month, into a broad market index fund like the VOO or VTI. Then delete the app from your home screen. Make it annoyingly difficult to check your balance. Check it once a quarter. That is all you need. Step number 2, gamify your inputs, not your outputs. During the first 8 years, your total return is going to be depressing. We've established that. So stop looking at it. Instead, gamify what you can control. Track your savings rate. Celebrate the fact that you successfully invested $10,000 this year, regardless of what the market did. If the market dropped 10% this year, celebrate the fact that your $10,000 just bought shares on sale. You are accumulating assets. Focus on how many shares you own, not the daily dollar value of those shares. Step number 3, redefine your timeline. I see this all the time. People start investing and 6 months later they say, Scarlett, it's not working. 6 months is not an investment timeline. 6 months is a savings goal for a vacation. Investing is a decades-long game. You have to mentally sign a contract with yourself that the money you put into your brokerage account does not exist for the next 10 years. It is locked away in the compounding engine and you are not allowed to touch it. Look, building wealth is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's not about finding the perfect stock at the perfect time. It is about deeply understanding the mathematics of time and having the psychological resilience to let those mathematics work. Every time you choose to invest your money instead of spending it on fleeting lifestyle inflation, you are not just buying numbers on a screen. You are buying your future freedom. You are buying the ability to walk away from a toxic boss. You are buying the ability to retire before your body breaks down. You are buying the option to wake up on a Tuesday and do whatever the hell you want to do. But you don't get that freedom in year one. You get it by surviving the 8-4-3 rule. You get it by pushing that snowball up the hill when it's heavy and boring and feels like it's going nowhere, so that one day gravity takes over and your money does the heavy lifting for you. If this video shifted your perspective today or finally made the math of compounding click for you, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel out more than you know. And make sure you are subscribed because I am going to keep breaking down the exact mathematical and psychological frameworks you need to build real wealth. Stay bored, stay disciplined, and let the math work. I'll see you in the next one.